Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at a bunch of new cards from Silver Tempest. Well, they're from Paradigm Trigger in Japan, but they're going to be in Silver Tempest, including all of the what people often refer to as the mascot Pokemon, Pikachu and little rodents along those lines, the ones whose names never change from Japanese to English, and we tend to get one pretty much every generation. We've also got a new Medicham and a new Bham, but let's start off with the little rodents, because what we've basically got here is a set of 4 Pokemon who work together hyper-specifically as a specific deck, and the artwork fits together, and it's just wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. This is all designed to go together, and actually it works very much like the Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Hitmontop deck that we all saw a little while ago. That was one that was kind of interesting, whereby you essentially had different attacks that had to be used in the right order in order to actually get things rolling. So over there, you had to start off with Hitmonchan, 30 damage, switch to the bench. Then you used Hitmonlee, special combo, 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Then you used Hitmontop to do 60 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. And Hitmonlee had to be used after Hitmonchan, and Hitmontop had to be used after Hitmonlee, which had to be used after Hitmonchan. Well, we've got a very similar thing going on here. Translations from the lovely Antoine Boulet and the lovely me. Yay! So it all starts off with Togedemaru. Lovely Kawaii artwork here as well. And what we've got is a metal Pokemon that uses lightning energy, which on the one hand is kind of interesting, and on the other hand, you're not actually hitting very much damage. So generally speaking, the reason we would like this is we could use the same kind of energy but cover another type of weakness. That's not really going to happen here. But what you do is you flip a coin, and if heads, during your opponent's next turn, they take no prizes for knocking out this Pokemon. So they do still get to knock it out and deplete your resources, etc., but they don't get to take a prize. But do bear in mind, it is on a coin flip, which is a huge problem. Because if you flip tails, it's 10 damage for a single energy, and it's not ideal. Yes, we do still have Glimwood Tangle in the short term that lets you flip twice and gives you a pretty much 75% chance of hitting that heads, but that is not guaranteed, let's be clear. After you've used Togedemaru, we can go and have a look at Dedenne. Now, Dedenne has a pretty terrible 60 HP. These are all extremely weak Pokemon, and you'll see Togedemaru in the artwork there, which is lovely. Single energy, 10 damage, nobody cares. Single lightning energy, 60 damage. You can use this attack only if your Togedemaru used Togedash during your last turn. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Instant automatic paralysis is great. The 60 damage is still a bit weak. It's still a bit rubbish. But instant paralysis is awesome. Sure, your opponent might have a switch or something similar to get out of it. And you know what? If they do, they do. But they might not have a switch, ladies and gentlemen. And if they don't, this is going to buy you a turn beautifully. You'll notice this is a psychic type, so you are hitting another weakness again here. And actually, 60 damage ain't too bad. You add on a choice belt there, get the weakness rolling. You're actually hitting 180 damage, which really is not too bad at all. So, you know, decent amount of damage, instant paralysis, that's all right. Then we head on over to more Pico. Darkness type, still using lightning energy, 60 HP, and you'll notice you've got both Togedemaru and Dedenne on the artwork. I love here that they're essentially reminding you what you have to have used in all the artwork. That's really quite cool. And what you've got here is Pico Blast. You may use this attack only if your Dedenne used Dedenne Shot during your last turn. This attack does 60 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. And I love this. Remember, this is Hitmontop. Remember, Hitmontop was number 3 in the last chain, and this does exactly what Hitmontop did as well. Now, one of the things that must be borne in mind, At the moment, in the trading card game as we play it right now, Manaphy is huge. Manaphy is everywhere. And part of the reason for this is Radiant Greninja. It's actually quite a big part of the reason. But Manaphy is played in huge numbers at the moment. And let's face it, it's probably going to keep being played for a while. But here's the thing, and this is a big downside in playing something like this. You are telegraphing from a mile away what your plan is. So if your opponent sees you use Togedemaru, they know that you're going to be using Morpeko to spread 60 in 2 turns' time. That gives them 2 turns to get their Manaphy out, and that is a huge problem with the deck. Then we finally finish off with who else, ladies and gentlemen? Pikachu. And you've got Togedemaru and Dedenne on that artwork, but I cannot see Morpeko. Do let me know in the comment section if I'm being dumb. Single lightning energy, 20 damage, but if your Dedenne used Dedenne shot during your last turn, this attack does 180 more damage. Hang on a second. That's a little bit weird, and yes, it is. Because you'll notice it is not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 3. That is why Morpeko doesn't show up on the artwork for Pikachu, because you don't use this after Morpeko, you use it after Dedenne. So first you use Togedemaru, hopefully get immunity for a turn, although your opponent can gust around it. Then you use Dedenne to get automatic paralysis, get a bit of damage on the board, hopefully buy yourself more time. It's basically 2 turns of doing a tiny bit of damage and buying time, and then every 3rd turn you get a big attack, either Morpeko spreading damage or Pikachu hitting for 200, which incidentally, unless you use a choice belt, still isn't enough to one-hit KO a Pokemon V. And it's miles away from KOing a Pokemon V-Star. Although, if you hit with Dedenne, then you will be at V-Star KOing territory, as long as one of those 2 attacks had a choice belt on. And you know what? I love the idea of this, and I think it's fun, but I think it's fun. I don't think it's good. They all have a retreat cost of 1, and they all attack for a single energy, which is nice, but actually not quite good enough. I've got to keep finding the energy. And the fact of the matter is, as awesome and as fun as this is, there's no attack here that's quite good enough. Sure, 200 damage for a single energy hitting a great weakness is amazing, not every 3rd turn. It's the equivalent to doing like 70 damage a turn. Yes, automatic paralysis is good, but you can switch around it. Yes, getting immunity from giving up prizes is good, but you've still got to actually flip ahead, and your opponent can still gust around it. And that's kind of the problem, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think any of these attacks are actually good enough, and that makes me genuinely sad. I'm giving this whole thing 3 wassies, because honestly, I don't view it as terribly competitive. I view it as fun. And sure, there are going to be people who play like a 1-1-1 line, because this is something I've considered, I'll be honest with you. Lugia's really good. I need a way to counter Lugia. Attack with Togedemaru, don't give up a prize. Attack with Dedenne, they're paralyzed. Get a KO for 2 prizes with Pikachu. In decks that can find a couple of spaces where you really have no other way to counter something like Lugia, it's a ridiculous, stupid, fun way to do it, but it's nothing more than that. One that I like way more is the Medicham. We got 120 HP, and we've got an ability that says if you have exactly 4 cards in hand, this Pokemon's attacks cost 4 colorless energy less. Sorry, 3 colorless energy less, but it doesn't matter, they're free, that's the point. They are free, unless your opponent is increasing your attack cost somehow. Point is, 4 cards in hand, easy. Play Amani, play 1 card, boom, 4 cards in hand. Use Bieber to draw 2, got 5 cards in hand. Play a card, boom, job's a good un. It's not that difficult, right? 4 cards in hand is fine. And to be honest, a lot of the time you'll be able to do it naturally. There will unfortunately be times, we saw this with Yanmega Prime way back, where you kind of want to play cards, but you can't play any cards, because if you play cards, you don't have to pay for your attack, and the whole point is you're not paying for attacks. This was if you had the same number of cards in hand as your opponent, they were free. Point is, this can be good. And then we've got 80 damage. If your opponent has a Pokemon V Max in play, it does 90 more damage. Now, to be fair, the 90 isn't great because you're doing 170. With a choice bout, you're up to 200. That's actually not KOing Pokemon V, which is kind of what you're going for here. But hitting for weakness, this is good, because there are a couple of very relevant Pokemon around at the moment that are seeing a bunch of play that are weak to Psychic. And they are Lucario V-Star and Hisuian Decidueye V-Star, which, I'll be honest with you, I didn't take seriously, and now I feel a bit silly because maybe I should have done. And essentially, this is a great counter for them if your opponent has a VMAX in play. And to be fair, those cards are generally played with Flying Pikachu VMAX, but then again, if your opponent knows what you're doing, they will not put Flying Pikachu into play, because to do so would be to give up one of their other V-Star. So, my problem with this is really rather simple. The numbers don't quite work. You're really close, but they don't quite work. Essentially, if my opponent doesn't have a VMAX in play, then 80 damage plus 30 for a choice bout is 110. Double with weakness is 220, you'll get the V but not the V-Star. Even using super effective glasses to make the resistance 3 times rather than 2 times will be 3 times 80, which is 240, which is not enough to KO the V-Stars. And that makes me a little bit sad, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. That makes me a little bit sad. If your opponent puts a VMAX in play, love it. But your opponent is not going to want to put a VMAX into play if this is your counter, put it simply. Maybe you can surprise them in turn 1 or game 1, but remember that we play in tournaments mostly best of 3, so if your opponent falls for this game 1, there is 0 chance they're going to fall for it in games 2 and 3. I love this in a Zoroark deck. I love having a 0 energy attacker that can hit for psychic weakness, but I don't like that the numbers don't quite work. To be clear, if you're looking for a Psychic-type attacker in a Zoroark deck, this is still potentially a 0 energy deal, and it's not that difficult to get it for 0 energy. So you can still hit, 160 to a Psychic-weak Pokemon for 0 energy. It's still nice in that regard, but the fact is, you're only hitting the really good numbers when your opponent has a VMAX in play, and a lot of the time, they're not going to. Although, do remember, nowadays, we're about to see an awful lot of decks that are starting stuff like Comfy, which has 70 HP. So, go first, turn 2, get this out, start taking out Comfy. I can think of worse plays. But I'm afraid I'm giving this thing 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. Because actually, when it comes down to it, as much as I love the free attack, and I love how it works with Zoroark, I am not loving the numbers. And that leaves us one more Pokemon to have a little bit of a chat about, and that is Bham, and we can be pretty quick. We got 90 HP, which is low, but do remember level ball's a thing. We got single energy 30 damage, which is absolutely terrible. On a stage 1, I at least want a special condition if I'm doing that. And then we've got 2 colorless energy, 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, not affected by weakness or resistance. Fine. Bearing in mind it also doesn't hit weakness on the active. You know what? Again, in a Zoroark deck where you're switching around different 2 energy attackers and using twin energy and all of that, yeah, fine, this could be good. But firstly, it's only 60 damage, and most basics nowadays have 70, so you're not even going to be taking out cheeky Pokemon on the bench. And secondly, Manaphy's a thing. Don't get me wrong, I like this as an occasional tech in those Zoroark decks. Take out a weak bench Pokemon or finish out a bench Pokemon that you've hit and all of that. But the reality of the situation is, most of the time, your opponent is either going to have a Manaphy on the bench, or there's not going to be a good enough target anyway. This is another one I'm afraid I can't take terribly seriously. Let's give this 3 Wassies. I just don't think it's going to work very much. Hey-ho. I did initially get very excited about the Medicham. I thought the Medicham could be awesome, but I do think even that is just a little bit short of where I want it to be. Hey-ho. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about all of these Pokemon, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games and all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts. That's pretty much weekly, answer all your questions. You can join a Discord to chat with us, and I give shout-outs to people like the lovely CD Infinity, who is one of our newer Patreons and is, seemingly at least, a very lovely person. So thank you for the support, and thank you for being a thoroughly lovely person. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.